Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz at ClassicsToday.com here with a very special list of bird classics. 12 magnificent chirping, twittering examples. And I dedicate this video to my niece Caroline and her new husband Devin, who were married last weekend. It turns out they are ornithologists. They are bird watchers, and they love birds. In fact, when they said their vows, they both had the same hummingbird things. I hate to tell you this, kids, but I just read an article about hummingbirds being extremely predatory and mean to each other. So let's hope that the hummingbirds was only the happy, poetic version. And actually, the happy, poetic version of birds is what we have in mind here. Because when composers take bird song and use it in musical compositions, they are generally not trying to be too literal. It's often quite stylized, although it gets more literal as it goes, as we shall see, as we get closer to the 20th century. But here we have 12 fabulous compositions, or groups of compositions, involving birdsong. And all kinds of birds. Oh, my goodness, just bazillions of them. So let's start with the earliest, Vivaldi's Flute Concerto, Opus 10, number 3 in D major, subtitled Il Gardellino, which is a goldfinch. Well, I don't really know what a goldfinch sounds like. I assume that Caroline and Devin know much better than I do, so they'll be able to tell how well Vivaldi managed to evoke his goldfinch. Like I said, a lot of these things are fairly evocative and simply poetic evocations and stylizations, not literal goldfinches. But the flute, of course, is the bird instrument par excellence. You often hear flutes when birds come into classical pieces. And so there you go, number one. Number two, Vaughan Williams, the Lark Ascending. Well, the lark in this case is a solo violin, which chirps and twitters and ascends. Now, the Lark Ascending is used like every 5 minutes, I'm told, on England's classic FM. It's sort of like their theme song unofficially. And playing it that often would drive you absolutely berserk. Frankly, the piece has driven me absolutely berserk because I've heard it so many times. But it is exquisitely beautiful, we have to confess. Absolutely lovely, maybe a couple of minutes too long in some performances, but I know that Caroline and Devin would enjoy it very much if they have a chance to hear it. So give it a shot, guys, and see what you think. Then Delius, on hearing the first cuckoo in spring. Well, this is just one little bird, and first we have to deal with spring. This is a short tone poem, 6 or 7 minutes long or so. I don't know, it's quite brief. Very, very pretty. The opening theme is a little bit like that Western song, Goodbye Old Paint, I'm Leaving Cheyenne. You know that song? Ya da 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 da. Although it's very close, the tune. And in the midst of this beautiful, lovely springtime fluid melody, you have a clarinet that's going cuckoo. Well, that's the cuckoo. And that's about as close as we get to the bird in this particular case. It's just a single solitary bird, but it chirps a bit. You know, it's got some chirpy things, but it's a mellow, very mellow bird, I think. You know, Delius's birds tend to be mellow. Then we've got Ravel, Mother Goose, the complete ballet, not the suite. All 25 minutes of it. Oh, this is wonderful. Well, you've got fairy tales, of course. First of all, you've got, what's the Tom Thumb one where the birds eat up all the breadcrumbs and you hear the birds going cheep, 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 like that as they're munching up the breadcrumbs. But the prelude and interludes are full of magical, mysterious, evocative bird song. Not specific birds, but just this mysterious twittering and chirping and wonderful flutter tonguing on the flutes, which is where you hold them and then you go, well, flutists could do it. You wiggle your tongue and you make like a tremolo, like that. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a flute player, but it sounds really cool. That's the point. Mahler, Symphony number 2, The Resurrection. Well, Mahler was always a bird guy, The first symphony opens with birdsong. Most of his symphonies are full of birdsong evocations here and there, which he doesn't explain. They're not specified as birdsong per se. They are birdsong. I mean, it's no question, because there's always nature in his works in one form or another. There's some wonderful, mysterious, nocturnal birdsong things in the Seventh Symphony. But the one I'm thinking of in the Resurrection Symphony happens in the finale, where there's that fabulous offstage cadenza where the apocalypse essentially has happened and everything is blown up, and over a soft drum roll and mysterious offstage drum horn calls and trumpets are doing fanfares and the timpani are rolling, and on stage everything else is like off stage. On stage you have nothing but a solo flute and a solo piccolo doing the last sounds of earthly life, summoning the souls of the dead to their resurrection. Oh wow, what an amazing moment it is, and what a fabulous use of stylized birdsong. I mean, it's the crux of the entire movement, really, and it's breathtaking. It lasts only a couple of minutes, but wow! I mean, what a fabulous use of birdsong in a dramatic context. Fantastic. Then, of course, there's Liszt's famous St. Francis of Assisi preaching to the birds. St. Francis was the bird saint. So whenever composers evoke St. Francis, they're as likely to turn to birdsong as well. Now, this piece, which is lovely, it's part of two legends. And there's St. Francis de Sales walking on the waves and St. Francis of Assisi, preaching to the birds or whatever they are. But this exists in two versions, one for piano, one for orchestra. And Caroline and Devin, you can compare them on your honeymoon. One of you could pick the orchestral version, and one of you could take the piano version, and you can have your first and best marital argument over which version is better. It's your best marital argument because it's completely unimportant and irrelevant, but it's a lovely work. So you may want to give that one a shot. Then, of course, there's Respighi's The Birds, his delicious suite for chamber orchestra. This is a selection of pieces based on Renaissance and Baroque music by earlier composers, which Respighi has juiced up with lovely, rich, modern orchestration. And each one of the pieces is named after a particular bird. It's an evocation of a bird by those earlier composers. It's really marvelous. Historically, birds have always turned up in classical music and instrumental music. And so, here's one of the great modern examples. Well, modern, I guess it was written around the 1920s now. So it's a century old. I think of anything that's after 1900 as modern, because you're dealing in geological time after all. So The Birds is like one of those classic pieces that you should really get to know if you're a bird person. Also, Saint-Saëns, The Carnival of the Animals. Now, the swan from Carnival of the Animals is really, really well known, extremely well known. So, and that's not even, doesn't have to sound like a swan. Swans actually have rather nasty voices, I think, don't you? But they're beautiful. And that's Saint-Saëns' whole point. It's a cello solo, and a very, very beautiful and famous cello solo. You know it. Everybody knows it. But also in the Carnival of the Animals, there are cocks and hens in the barnyard. And there's like another cuckoo in there somewhere, I'm pretty sure. They're all over the place. So the Carnival of the Animals is fun, and of course it's fun for all the other animals as well. Now, here's a very stylized and fabulous bird thing. Dvořák's tone poem, The Wood Dove. This is a musical setting of a rather gory Czech tone poem about a woman who poisons her husband in order to marry her lover, and they do get married. And as they sleep in their marital bed outside their window on the bough of a tree, below which her husband is supposedly buried or something like that, there is a dove, a wood dove, and it coos. And the cooing constantly annoys the murderess and insinuates itself into her guilty brain until at last she kills herself by flinging herself out a window into a river or something like that. But then at the end, with the spirit of the murdered man appeased, the mood becomes transfigured, and the cooing of the dove becomes a seraphic benediction. It's really marvelous. And Dvořák does the dove part so effectively. It's fabulous, because it begins with the funeral march, the burial of the dead guy. And then there's the wedding of the woman to her new boyfriend. And then the dove. Ooh, wow. Super cool. Really, really nifty. So that's a wonderful piece. It's really not about a bird at all. I mean, the bird is the central figure in the second half of the tone poem, but it's bird song used for very dramatic and poetic effect. Absolutely fabulous. Then Haydn. Haydn was a bird guy. A lot of people don't know that. He wrote all kinds of bird things. There's the Hen, Symphony number 83, but I'm talking about his bird string quartets. There are two of them. One is called The Bird, Opus 33, number 3. And it's hard to tell exactly what part is the bird part, whether it's the first movement or the finale, because they're both very bird-like. They have different birds in them, but they're definitely chirpy and twittery. And then there's the Lark String Quartet, which is Opus 64, number 5, one of his most famous string quartets. It begins with the most rapturous evocation of dawn. And it's just called the Lark because, well, it's kind of like the lark ascending. It's just lark-like. You just hear the sun coming up and this wonderful, seraphic, bird-like song floating over all of it. And so it's been called the Lark. I mean, you don't really have to call it the Lark, but you might as well because it's one of those iconic images. After Haydn, of course, there's Beethoven, the Pastoral Symphony, one of the most famous classical music evocations of actual bird song. I mean, real bird song in this case, happens at the end of the slow movement, the scene by the brook, where Beethoven quotes 3 different birds. There's a cuckoo and a quail and a bullfinch or a scarlet tanager or something that's hanging out in the Viennese woods somewhere. And they do their little chirpy things before the end of the movement. It's a lovely, delicious, poetic interlude that all bird fanciers really have to know. I mean, if you want to be worthy of the term bird fancier. And last but not least, there is the king, the bird king. It's Messiaen, contemporary French composer. Now, Messiaen's bird song treatment is very, very unusual because he actually was a literal transcriber of birdsong. He was an ornithologist. He ran around collecting birdsong. And then in order to turn it into music, he had to do things to it because birdsong is often microtonal and the pitches tend to be very, very high. And he's writing for solo piano or for a full orchestra or an interestingly constituted orchestra of like winds, percussion, and piano in some of these works. So there is a degree of stylization. And he also doesn't just quote birdsong. Often he tries to depict the bird's environment in the music. And he had synesthesia to make it even more fun. He saw harmonies in terms of colors. So he wanted blues and reds and things all tossed in. And oh my goodness, it's a whole fandango of fabulous influences. But the birdsong is paramount. And I've listed his major bird works below. There are 6 of them. There's Catalogue d'Oiseaux, which is 13 pieces for piano solo. It's unbelievable. I have it sitting right here, in fact. There it is. The Catalogue d'Oiseaux. It's rather amazing. And which has a sequel, Le Fauvet des Jardins, which is the garden warbler. It's a half hour long. I mean, it depicts like dawn to dusk with a garden warbler, a day in the life of a garden warbler. And believe me, he and his wife, Yvonne Loriod, sat there with their binoculars all day watching the garden warbler. Believe me, they did. They were very dedicated. Then there's Réveil des Oiseaux, the awakening of the birds, which is for piano and orchestra. Oiseaux exotiques, exotic birds. Petite esquisse d'Oiseaux, little bird sketches. We just did Le Fauvette des Jardins and Une vitraille et des oiseaux, The Awakening and the Birds. Really kind of, Une vitraille, that's not The Awakening. We did The Awakening, the Réveil des oiseaux, right? The Awakening of the Birds, yes. No, Une vitraille des oiseaux is the stained glass window and the birds. That's what it is, which gets to mix Messiaen's two favorite objects, which is, Christianity, Catholicism specifically, and birds, which he regarded as God's greatest musicians. So that's a wonderful place to end this little survey of a dozen fabulous bird classics, all dedicated to the happiness of my niece and Devin. I love you both. I wish you well. Congratulations, Mazel Tov, and enjoy your birds. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.